Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Barry Braster from Etteplan introducing you to the new HyperSTE 7.0, which will be today's topic of the webinar. Very brief introduction again about for those of you who are not familiar with Etteplan. We provide engineering, embedded systems, Internet of Things, and technical documentation solutions, and we've been doing that since 1983, quite some time. Currently over 25 employees, 450 of us are documentation experts, like probably most of you as well. So that means is that we create, manage and publish technical documentation on a day-to-day basis with technical authors, illustrators, software specialists, etc. Global company, these are the countries that we are currently in. ISO certified, publicly listed firm, and that's the revenue that we had last year. We provide engineering with a different types of services, and what we mean with that is we provide basically a one-stop shop for the full product life cycle support of your products, meaning that we can help with engineering. We can help with technical documentation separately or as part of your engineering, where we provide both services and software, which is what I'm talking about today with regards to HyperSTE. And then also since this year, we can now offer embedded systems together with IoT, so industrial internet solutions. So that basically makes a circle fully round with regards to our offering. Now, with regards to documentation then, we support the whole process of producing customer-focused content. So basically agreeing what information is needed by the end user, using standards then to make it as effective and efficient as possible, then work with different types of tooling in order to help us out with making sure that everything is created, managed, and published as efficient as we can, and in the end providing our end users, whether it's consumers or whether it's business-to-business users, like for instance field service engineers, provide them with the information that is correct, easy to understand, fast to retrieve, in order to basically optimize your maintenance / service business. So it's helping out with the full life cycle there. Now a little bit deeper on that. Brief introduction about content quality itself. So what is that? Is it important? Of course it is. We feel it's a very important aspect of technical documentation because, well, as most of you know, over the last couple of decades, information is becoming more complex, more bulky. There are new markets. Our service centers are geographically dispersed. We have an increasing number of non-native speakers as well as inexperienced personnel, meaning that you have technical authors that have a different language, cultural or technical background that have to write for an end user that also has a different language, cultural or technical background. And as a result, there can be a lot of risks for misunderstandings, liability issue, where at the same time your customer is requiring your response time to be decreased. You, of course, want the uptime to be maximized of your products, meaning that the downtime needs to be shortened, and that's not going to make it easy if, for instance, documentation is inconsistent with regards to terminology and words as a result of mergers and acquisitions. So really where documentation traditionally is regarded as a necessary evil because of the legal liabilities, right? I mean, we have to provide the documentation for our products in the language to the country that we usually export to. That is one aspect, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of changing now these days where our end users are regarding information that comes with a product to be much more crucial and helpful, and if it's not done the right way, it's going to, at one hand, be downside, you know, not work well for your business, but at the same time also making consumers have basically a bit of a negative view of products as well. If your documentation is not in order, that will in the end negatively affect your the way people look at your products as well. So the business drivers then for excellence in documentation, well, excellence in documentation will result in excellence in operation. So that is one aspect, but at the same time you also want to reduce the documentation cost, which includes also translation costs. So you want to improve the product performance through standardization of content across products. You want to reduce the risk, the operational overhead. You want to be able to accelerate your time to market, and all of that can be done through optimized documentation processes as well. That will help you with your maintenance and reliability of your service, your aftermarket business, help reduce the downtime, reduce complexity, ambiguity, so documentation that is not clear, and that which, of course, as I mentioned already, which can hurt the entire value chain. So support operational excellence, promote the global workforce safety, comply with both national as well as international regulations and operating standards, including ISO. So those are some really nice business drivers for you, where documentation, believe it or not, can actually be a very important part of. So then, HyperSTE 7.0. Well, the tool has been around since, well, for 15 years now, actually. 13 years it's been commercialized, so that means that we first used it ourselves in our day-to-day processes, and then realized that there was actually a market for it. We had a lot of writers with other companies that saw the benefits, and hence in 2013 HyperSTE 1.0, of course, at the time saw its first light. It's been around for quite some time, been used by a lot of hundreds and hundreds of technical authors around the world. What it is, it's a content quality checker. So that means that can either be a plug-in to your authoring system. We also have a standalone desktop version that supports style guides, standards for writing, specifications for writing, to make sure that everyone writes the same way. Basically, that we all comply with, as I'd like to call it, the 3 C's for clarity, conciseness, and consistency. So clear, so that all our end users understand us, but so that also makes translations cheaper and better in quality. Being concise means that we write information that is short to the point, making it also more understandable, stick with the need to know and not so much with the nice to know. And then thirdly, writing information consistently so that everyone is using the same terminology. So, because if you're using different terms in different parts of your documentation, your end users are going to think you're talking about something else. So that's what HyperSTE does. It optimizes your content to make sure that everyone adheres to the rules for terminology, spelling, grammar, and style. It highlights mistakes, it gives suggestions for correction, but we also provide you with reporting so that you have a bit of an idea, or actually a lot of an idea, because there's a lot of information in those reports about the overall content quality and performance. I mentioned it's a plugin. It's available for XMetal, Arbitext, Word, FrameMaker, Flare, for Madcap, Oxygen, Xmax, and many more. So what's new in 7.0? Well, the old names are, of course, it's still regarded as HyperSTE, but we are now going to call it the HyperSTE Suite because there's a few products that actually come with it. First and foremost, it's the actual content checker, which is the plugin, to Word, Flare, FrameMaker, etc., etc. Then there's also a standalone version, which we are going to now call, instead of generic, we're going to call it desktop. The dictionary maintenance tool, DMT, is now known as the terminology manager. The sentence database editor, SDE, is now known as the sentence manager. And then there's HyperMine, which is our terminology miner, which really is not commercially available. We use that to provide you with a service in order to help you standardize on terminology. So we updated a few things. So the look and feel, obviously, as you can see, looks quite nice with nice colors. There's new icons, new symbols. There's also a new feedback window, which as you can see on your right-hand side. It's got a bit of an upgrade. You can actually downsize this as well, so that you only deal with the information as a writer that's interesting to you. So that feedback window has been introduced, and as you can see, the new symbols and icons have all gotten quite a bit of an upgrade there to make it more modern, feel, look and feel, etc. So the updated user interface I mentioned, there's also new supported editors, which I'll be talking to you about in a moment. There's also an updated centralized term candidate dictionary functionality, so I'll talk to that about that in a moment as well. And of course the regular stability and bug fixes. The user interface also adheres to the, also concerns the reporting features you can see right here. So there's quite a few, bunch of things that you can get from a report. Your regular score, obviously, but there's also readability, Flash Kincaid grade, translatability, etc., etc. And if you want to get more details, then of course, and I'll show that to you in a moment during a live demo. Centralized terminology management is, in addition to working with the dictionaries manually as it used to be, we also now have a dictionary server, and that means that everything is on a shared drive so that people can update information, primary dictionary, secondary dictionary, project dictionary, work with all of that at the same time, meaning that it's much easier now. That whole process is now automated. And that means that you can go from term candidates to and update the dictionaries that you have very easily by looking at the term candidates and then by adding them to the well, your own company dictionary, basically through a drag and drop type of way. So it makes it much easier, and it's really fully automated. Everyone can see which terms are trying to being added by other writers, etc., etc. New supported editors as well. So, you know, Word 365 2016 was already supported in 6.5, but the latest and greatest is now being supported. Oxygen editor 17, soon to be 18 as well. Madcap Flare 12, FrameMaker 2015, so that's I think version 13, and then basically all the editors that are generally supported include Word, FrameMaker, Arbitext 6.1, I believe they're currently at, InDesign, Flare, Oxygen, XMetal, XMax, and then also the newly supported Ultra Author by the company WebEx Systems. Whenever you're talking about XML, that means that we also have to integrate with content management systems. We're obviously still and continue to do that. Supported systems include, but are not limited to, Fisher's TimRS, Exiasoft's Data, CMS, SDL's Knowledge Center, Windchill by PTC, R4I by the wonderful folks at Absolute Data Group, and others. The out-of-the-box version of HyperSTE helps you to basically start writing from the get-go in a controlled way. It comes out of the box with all the writing rules enabled. These are writing rules for terminology, spelling, grammar, style, structure. They're all in there. The out-of-the-box dictionary includes thousands of words that are either approved or not approved. The only thing that you do need to do either yourself or we can help you do that is to add and standardize on your own company specific terminology. But that's really something that you can have done and turn around quite quickly. As long as you adhere to the golden rule, is that one word can only have one meaning. So if you have multiple words that have the different meanings, I'm sorry, if you have multiple words that have the same meaning, or if you have one word that has multiple meanings, then of course that's something that you want to probably standardize on. If you look at the fact that on a day-to-day basis we use between 50,000 to 80,000 words, then HyperSTE from the first day can help you reduce that all the way down to 8,000 words, which still seems like a lot, but it's really a lot less than what you're normally used to. Issues that HyperSTE addresses, so of course end users that are not happy with what they're reading because it makes information hard to find, understand. Well, that's something that is being addressed, whether they are customers or field service engineers. Safety risks are being dealt with, potentials for equipment damage and interruptions of the product life cycle. Obviously it deals with translations. If your source of your translations was bad, well, you can't really expect your translations to be good as well. Legal liabilities, cost of your service/maintenance business, and really what it does is by turning content into quality content that people can understand, it will ensure that products don't, you know, go down in the first place. So that means that and with going down, it means going out of service, right? So, and that means you'll actually be facilitating preventive maintenance as well. Survey results here, I'll really briefly go through that, but you can really see the numbers here that how it's helped our hundreds of writers around the world to save in translation costs, reduced word count. Reduced word count is important to note here because we also provide training, which is a 2-day writing course, which helps authors and engineers stick with the need to know and not so much focus on the nice to know. And that can really help reduce your content by quite significant numbers. Reduced product cycle time, it'll help in bringing your documentation costs down overall, etc., etc. These are some of the users around the world, so some of the companies. A lot in aerospace and defense you can see because it's mandatory to use a controlled standard called Simplified Technical English there, and we fully comply with that. Banking and financing, medical, energy, offshore oil and gas, technology, etc., etc. Basically anything that has technical information involved is something that we help out with regards to, well, thanks to the use of HyperSTE. Very brief about the total model that we support. It's not just about the content, meaning the text itself, right? That's, you can see that's just a piece of the puzzle. Meaning that if you really want to follow and what we call the Etteplan model for technical documentation, you also need to look at other things. You need to look at, first and foremost, as we mentioned already earlier in the content strategy step 1 through 7 overview, excuse me, is that you want to provide your end user with information that they need. And then of course you have to do that based on what you have in your source. You know, if it's managed in ERP or your PLM or both, what does this all look like? What does your raw data look like? And we have to make sure that we manage that using standards like Simplified Technical English, like Simplified Technical Illustrations, which is our methodology to go from unstructured 3D CAD drawings to structured and simplified and easy to understand illustrations or animations. To using, as I mentioned, STE, Data XML or S1000D XML, etc., etc., using the right tools to support that entire production management publishing overview, workflow, I should say, in order to be able to publish to not just PDF, but also interactive files that can really be published on, you know, laptops, tablets, etc., so that we can provide our end users with quick and easy to understand access of technical information. And how would that look? How would that process look? If you have your XML editor right here, you do quality assurance on that with HyperSTE. You manage everything in your data CMS, for instance, or S1000D CMS, where you can then publish to PDF if needed, or to something that we call HyperSTE. That's our interactive viewer. More about that in a moment. Still work with existing OEM documentation in the form of PDF files, but working with simplified illustrations, where really what you're doing is you're applying a methodology that is going to structure and simplify your illustrations using tools like lattice technology, for instance, and then being able to, in the end, publish everything into an interactive viewer called HyperSTE. And what that is, it's a viewer that sits on top of a content management system, for instance, that gives you the ability to do a visual search. So by clicking on an interactive illustrations to get very quickly to information, for instance, how to install, how to maintain, how to operate certain parts of the machinery. So that's really what we're trying to, and then of course being able to order parts as well where necessary. Now that being said, I'll leave that up for another webinar that we're going to do very shortly to talk to you a little bit more about HyperSTE 2.0, which will come out within the next month or so. Leave that for now. The other thing that I want to add is that we have new websites as well, so please visit simplifiedenglish.com where you can get a lot of information on HyperSTE, including what services we offer, the references, dive into the library to get a little bit more background information if needed, and then you are also free, of course, to visit the new technical documentation.services website, and our translation website has been renewed as well. Any questions? Feel free to contact my colleague in the US, which is mark.ogden@etteplan.com, and there's his phone number. For Europe and Asia, this is my contact information right there, Barry Braster. Of course, we have a number of offices, about over 200 folks in China, in 3 different offices. If you are from that region, I'd be more than happy to forward the local contact information to you, of course. So that being said, I'm going to do a very brief demonstration of, well, first and foremost, I'd like to show it how HyperSTE works in Oxygen, a wonderful tool by our friends at Singersoft, where you can get feedback on, you can see some of these words have colored underlining colors, and you can basically walk through the content by doing an interactive check that will tell us exactly what is right or wrong, and then do a word by word replacement. So there's the information window of HyperSTE right here. There's also a sentence database right here. There's also the reporting feature that I'll show to you in a moment. But what I also want to show you in this case in Microsoft Word, which we are right here. So if I just check this document with HyperSTE, we're getting colors, of course, that tells us what is right or wrong about this. Well, this word is incorrectly spelled, so I'll just go through that. Acceptable is, can have 3 different meanings, so I'll pick permitted because that is the correct meaning in this case, etc., etc. So you can do word by word replacements, or HyperSTE will tell you while you're checking what is right or wrong with the entire sentences. But what I want to show you is how we work with full sentences. So as you can see right here, these number of sentences all trying to say the same thing, but the writers are using different words. And in this case, you're able to just not only click on the words, but to get feedback on a full sentence base, meaning that these words are these sentences are similar. So that's a little similar symbol right here, as well as showing you the compliance rating. So in this case, you are able to select a sentence that has already been rewritten by one of my colleagues, and just do a full sentence by sentence replacement. That is not only 100% compliant, but also 100% similar. And you can see what this will do for your translation memory. So it's very powerful there. And if I clear, of course, I'm being asked if I want to update the sentence database, and we are then good to go. Reporting wise, just to show you, if we can analyze thousands of words, in this case close to 75,000 words, which should give you an idea of how good or how bad we're doing with regards to terminology. But if I go to the detailed results, then you can see there's quite a bit of non-approved words here, and then I can basically get an idea of what we're doing here. So words like may or should or might or could are not allowed because it is not clear if I should either do something or not. So, okay, that concludes this particular webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. This is the address, and then we look forward to meeting you again at the next webinar. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.